today, right now, we're going to talk about how important it is to tell a story. If you think about telling a story, stories are the lifeblood of accomplishing what you want. If you're telling a story at an interview, it's much easier to remember a story. So the interviewer asks you a question and you think about how you came to where you are today. Think of a story. Stories make a big difference. So we're going to play a video. This video is a very helpful video. This is a funny video, but it kind of explains it a little bit.
This is I Am. I Am is a good storyteller. No, scratch that. I Am is a great storyteller. We're always telling stories. We always have. From cave paintings to that jaunty new hat we're sporting, everything tells a story. I Am understands the importance of storytelling. Telling a good story gives you power over your audience. Stories engage people to help communicate ideas. You can see how this would be handy in the workplace. Telling a good story creates a bond between the storyteller and the listener. And when that connection is made, the brain of the listener releases oxytocin. The love hormone tells us that we can trust the storyteller and a relationship can form. And you wouldn't do business with someone you can't trust, right? The founder of a successful business will always have a good story to tell. Building a business through blood, sweat, tears, and sacrifice gives their story authenticity. And because they believe in it, you will too. You're telling your own story right now. It's not just those carefully chosen words. Subconsciously, you're giving off signals. Your body posture, the clothes that you're wearing. Stories don't have to be complex or detailed to be interesting. The simpler a story is, the more likely it is to stick. You can maximize your storytelling power by remembering this simple little acronym. S. Solve a problem. Use your story to answer a question that your audience has been thinking. T. Triumph. Whatever happens in your story, an eventual triumph will capture the hearts of your audience. O. Outcome. Consider what you want the end game of your story is. Alt line. Consider what you want the end game of your story to be. What are you trying to achieve by telling it? R. Research. With the correct research, you can tailor a narrative to be specific to your audience. Y. U. Using your own stories wherever possible makes a story more believable. Believing in your story goes a long way to convincing your audience of your sincerity. Make your stories engaging and build a relationship with your audience. If you do that, you'll soon be working on a sequel. The end.
So the end of this thing was talking about tell your own story. Now, if you have a story to tell, everybody has a story to tell. If you're at a job and you're interviewing and the question is, where are you from? And if he hasn't read it already in your resume or your CV, then tell the story of who you are, where you're from. They may ask many different questions, and that's what we're getting to with this. Why stories are so important in the interview process, so you can get called back to the second one. Interviews can be so daunting or so difficult or so hard, and you can get nervous. I don't care who you are. I speak English very well, and I get nervous at an interview. If I'm going to an interview, I get nervous. I had one of my students I worked for last year for about 7 months, and he was great as my student. And then he said, I want you to talk to one of my colleagues because I want you to work for me. I'm like, oh my God, now what? And so I had to talk to the colleague and I had to present myself. And just the very fact of that it was an interview made me nervous. And so that's the whole point. The point is you want to be able to tell a story because it's easy to tell a story rather than remember all the facts about I used to work for this company and I'm now working for this company and these are some of the things I did at this company. Tell a story that it flows, that you can write down and practice, and that way you know the story. So we're going to watch one more video. This one I like better than that one. This is a great video.
There's a Native American proverb that says, "The one who tells the story rules the world." Stories have the potential to be incredibly powerful. They're able to change how we relate to each other, to change prejudice. So the potential for stories to persuade is staggering. I read this really good research paper about these two books, which basically suggested that if you get people to read a couple of chapters of Harry Potter, they'll rate themselves higher than other people in their ability to potentially move something just using the power of their mind. The people who read about the vampires, they'll actually believe that their teeth are slightly longer than other people in the population, just as a result of having read a chapter or two of this book. In terms of psychology, there's a few things that stories actually do to us. We get this sense that we're fully immersed in the world that we're reading about.
Would you like to come on an adventure?
And we start to almost feel as if the things that are happening to them are happening to us.
Reading is not a relaxation. You are building worlds. You are populating those worlds with cities, and those cities you are populating with people. So although television, film, theatre all have their place in the storytelling world, to me that moment of contact with a book, when you read a story and unlock its secrets, nothing quite comes close.
Our research has been on the meaning of individual words. If you read the word jump, for example, you activate those areas that you also activate when you do actually perform the action of jumping. So that would be about here somewhere. The interesting question in this case, of course, is, if you read about somebody else jumping, why should you activate brain areas related to jumping? The proponents of the theory would say that immersing yourself into a story is based on the mirror neuron system. I am convinced that mirror neurons are part of this process, but it can't be the whole story.
It's been found that when we connect with people who aren't real but are fictional characters, it forms a sort of social surrogate for us. It's almost like they're a real person when they're not. And psychologists sometimes call it forming a parasocial relationship. And what's interesting about that is it kind of makes us feel less lonely. And it can also buffer self-esteem and improve our mood. We know that having a lot of friendships with other people when you're in a couple is a really positive thing for the outcomes of that relationship. But what's really interesting is they don't have to be real people. If you're trying to change people's opinions about controversial topics such as same-sex marriage or immigration, for example, stories have actually been found to be a lot more effective in producing political change. Attitudes towards stigmatised groups could be improved by reading Harry Potter, but only if the person identified with Harry.
Children love stories. They always have a story to tell, whether it's about the weekend or what happened in the playground. And it's such an important part of understanding the world around them and understanding themselves.
You should definitely turn this off right now and go and pick up a book.
Excellent. So, how many of you remember as a child your parents reading you a story? See, we have a few. I remember. I have 3 children that are now adults, but I remember reading them stories all the time. Back when I first got married, 35 years ago, there was no internet, there was no cell phones, there was none of this that we have now. We didn't look things up. So we had a set of stories of 1001 Nights, and my wife and I would read that together every night. Stories are incredible. That's why it's so important to know about stories and how effective they can be for you to get what you want. We're talking about political change. They were talking about changing ideas about immigration, talking about things like that. Stories are more effective than any other form. You can tell people the facts about everything, but when you tell a story, it sinks into their heart, it goes into their brain, and it moves them to make an action, or moves them to make a difference. We're going to go over a couple things on one of my programs that I do. It's called Once Upon a Time. So pull that up, would you? And if I can, I would like some readers. We're going to get a couple people to read. Go to the next slide, please. Let's get the microphone to some, let's see, a volunteer. No volunteers. I'm just going to give somebody the mic. Go give it to whoever you want. Very good. Very good.
Stories are irresistible. Whether it's a gripping drama, a compelling crime novel, or even just a story of how we got to what we are today, stories connect with us emotionally and help us understand even the most complex topics.
You see that these words here, can you take the mic from her? Hang on to the mic, because I'm going to have you give it to other people. So a story that you come up with is your own personal story. It's something you've created, something that is unique to you. It's your story alone. And that's what's going to motivate the potential job you're going to. That's what's going to help them to see how passionate you are about yourself and how you're going to be with the company you're working for. This is why stories are so important. Let's go to start with a message. Start with a message. Do I get a volunteer to read that for me, or do I pick someone? All right, with the teddy bear there. There we go.
Start with a message. Every storytelling exercise should begin by asking, who is my audience and what is the message I want to share with them? Any decision about your story should come from these questions. What's the core moral I want to communicate to my team? How can I boil that down to one compelling statement?
Excellent. Excellent reading. Thank you, everybody, for your participation. It's wonderful. Thank you. So that's the whole idea is you have a message. Let's say that you contact a company in the United States or Canada, and they're an IT company. They're looking for somebody with your particular skills. Now, the IT company, not only do they need your hard skills, those skills that you can physically do by programming, they also want to know who you are and how you're going to fit in with the company. Right now, companies are looking for people that can communicate well, that can work with others. And by telling your story, when you go for that interview, you're going to get the second interview. It's so important to think about that. It's so important to try. And like I said, write down your story. Excellent. So let's get one more reader, and then we're going to go into the interview process itself. I saw somebody move their hand. Don't move your hand or I'll pick you. How about this young lady with the purple? There you go.
Use your personal experiences. The best storytellers look to their own memories and life experiences for ways to illustrate their message. What events in your life make you believe in the idea you are trying to share? Think of a moment in which your own failures led to success in your career, or a lesson that a parent or mentor imparted. Any of these things can be interesting, emotional, and triggers to a story.
Very good. Thank you very much. The story is your own. That's what this is talking about. The story you come up with from your memories. It's so much easier to remember a story that you have from your own memories. Don't try to tell someone else's story. Tell your story. Tell the one that is going to make a difference for you.